In this video, we're going to go over Chapter 10, the Environmental Health and Toxicology from the Essential Environment textbook. So there's a lot of different chemicals in our environment that we use for various purposes. However, there's a few that have come under public scrutiny and maybe have caused some alarm for various reasons that we are highlighting in this chapter. So one is BPA and one is called phthalates, and you'll see some different products that maybe reference that they are BPA free or phthalate free, but this is a certain additive that is being added to a lot of different products for various reasons. The reason for or the cause for alarm is that these different products can actually be linked to various cancers and also can be linked to different hormone disrupting chemicals in your body that make the human body behave differently than it would without these chemicals. So I would highly recommend you understand the history of this better. This is a video from Harvard University called Phthalates Explained that you watch that on your own time. But basically, there's a few lists I have in my presentations of different phthalates, but you can look it up online and find different things that phthalates are in. But examples of this are tons of different makeups and shampoos and hair conditioners and hairsprays and different plastics, etc. I mean, it's really in many products. And these different products or this additive can cause a disruption in your hormones. Specifically, in many cases, it mimics adding extra estrogen and basically converting one's testosterone to estrogen, which causes a number of problems in the human body, but can cause a list of any one of these. Early onset of puberty, interfering with male reproduction, natural functioning of your hormone system, reproductive and genital defects, lowering testosterone, lowering sperm count. Unborn babies and especially males are more affected, and kids in puberty also are um, very at risk, as well as adult women tend to be very at risk. So this is something that affects nearly everybody, that people should be looking into this and trying to understand a little bit more. So here's a list of some products that have BPA and that it's linked to breast cancer, infertility, early puberty, and different neurological disorders, and just some of the products that are very common that have BPA in it. And again, some products are now labeling themselves as BPA free, but you should know that this is probably in most American households are going to have this all throughout the house and the products in the house. And specifically in having extra estrogen and having a decrease in your testosterone, estrogen is great for what it does. Females tend to have more than males, and I have a chart about that where males tend to have more testosterone and females have less of that. And that's a whole different biology lesson. However, having your testosterone converted to estrogen when you really do need that testosterone for various purposes is problematic in humans. So, people have asserted that this is really unhealthy for us to have in our products. Specifically, Canada has banned BPA outright. The United States is now restricting it in children's products, but has not banned it, and it's still getting used quite a bit in the United States. So, environmental health is a field that studies how the environment around us as humans, which can be your workplace, it can be your homes, it can be the outside environment, etc., what those hazards are and how they affect humans. So a physical hazard is one like radiation from the sun, and a radiation from the sun can actually mutate your cells. You should be wearing sunscreens, but that is a type of environmental hazard. A chemical hazard is one where we have made a synthetic chemical and are spraying it around for different reasons, such as like pharmaceuticals or just disinfectants. You can also have chemical hazards that are natural, like venom or something like that. That's natural, but still not good for you. A biological hazard is something that is a living thing that is, or even a virus, which is non-living, but um, it's an infectious disease or a vector like a mosquito that is carrying a disease to us as humans. And then of course there's different cultural hazards, things where um, based on your age or the people that you maybe are hanging around, that there's maybe more drug use or maybe workplace hazards based on the job that you decided to take, etc. This can also be like um, healthy or unhealthy food that you are exposed to in different places. So, infectious disease is when a pathogen will enter your body different ways. This can happen because you don't have clean water or because of non-sanitary places, but the study of infectious disease and the study of environmental hazards looks to prevent infectious diseases from happening. So the toxicity is basically the amount of harm that can be caused by something that is toxic, and environmental toxicology is studying how human-made chemicals released into the environment, how they affect people. Some people get really worried about the toxins that are in drinking water, but I just put a link to, or like a screenshot of a Southern California water treatment plant. And you might have pipes in your house or something that are releasing some kind of toxins, but generally the water that is coming from different plants in the Southern California area anyways, that water is tested extremely regularly. I mean, moment by moment, to look for all kinds of different um, things that might cause harm to people. And if the water is not okay and does not fall into the healthy range, it will not be sent out to homes. So this is monitored um, constantly throughout every day to make sure that the water heading out from the plants is healthy. You can actually look up the water safety for your area by going to the water district, and it will list the reports of the of the safety of the water. But this is monitored constantly in Southern California. So some environmental hazards are like cigarette smoke or radon. We tend to not have a lot of radon in, well, there's still radon in Southern California, but it tends to not be tested for as much because we tend to not have basements in Southern California. But generally, radon is a gas that is undetectable, and literally the breakdown of bedrock just gives off, it off gases radon. And so when you have a basement home, this having the room just embedded in the rock can tend to allow radon into the space. So a lot of homes that have basements will have radon detectors there. Also, older homes, very old homes like from the 1970s and earlier, can have asbestos, which is now known to cause cancer throughout the home. So it's important to have that replaced if you know that it's there. Lead is a heavy metal that when you are exposed to lead, it can basically congregate or stay on the nerves and cause like nerve damage, because the nerves specifically have an electrical impulse that they use to carry messages, and that lead basically shorts out that electrical impulse and it stays there forever. In California, we have laws against we don't have leaded gas anymore. Some other states do. Lead was used as a conditioner in gases to help it like kind of flow better. And we no longer have that in Southern California. We have different conditioners for our gas that is not lead based. But there also has to be warning labels in California on leaded products. So Pbdes are different compounds that are put in all kinds of different products in the United States to make them flame retardant. And just like other chemicals, these are also hormone disruptors, but this is in furniture in the United States. Sometimes it's even in different anything that could catch fire, and sometimes even like pajamas and things like that. It's put into kids' pajamas so that they are flame retardant. Um, at any rate, toxicologists try to weigh these pros and cons to decide if a chemical can be safely used. So let me go to the next one. There was somebody that we talked about earlier called Rachel Carson who wrote Silent Springs, and she talked about DDT and how persistent it stays in the environment. And it kind of raises the concern that some of these synthetic chemicals, they don't just leave our environment after we stop using them. They can stay for a really long time and enter the environment in different ways, not just the soil, but also the air, the water, come up through different food and things like that before they get to us, and they can stay for a long time. But that's not to vilify all synthetic substances. Like here's an example of one, like Gower gum. It's basically used as a thickener and a binding agent in food to make it thick, and it actually has some really good health beneficial things, and they haven't really seen many bad things from it. So you can't vilify all synthetic substances. Carcinogens are ones that cause cancer, that cause your cells to mutate and change the gene structure of the cells, or cause the cells to like mutate or like grow uncontrollably. Those can be carcinogens. So neurotoxins are like heavy metals that damage the nervous system and can like short it out, like we said with lead. Allergens can cause your immune system to have an overly strong response to something that doesn't need an overly strong response, like pollen. Pollen is not going to hurt you, but it can cause your body to have like an overreaction to something that's not even dangerous. And then there are pathway inhibitors, things like cyanide, that will stop your body from making energy, and so you quickly die without the ability to make energy. There's also endocrine disruptors that stop your body from producing hormones in a normal way, or will convert things like your estrogen, or convert your testosterone to estrogen. So this causes lower levels of testosterone in males and females, and an increase in estrogen. So different organisms have developed different defenses against toxic substances, and certain substances we won't even metabolize, or they're excreted out of our body. So your body does have some ways to fight these off, but an individual can be more or less sensitive to a toxin just depending on their genetics, their health, their age, or their genders. Okay, also, how much a toxin affects you depends on how long you were exposed to that, and how much of the toxin you were exposed to. So this is another really cool how wastewater is treated video. It's on YouTube, and it's called How Do Wastewater Treatment Plants Work? I recommend you watch that to understand more about how wastewater is actually treated to become something usable again. Um, Toxins do eventually break down in the environment, depending on the temperature, moisture, what toxin is it, the sun exposure, etc. And those are all things that are studied over time. Some toxins will bioaccumulate in a body, meaning they will become more and more concentrated over time without breaking down. This can cause biomagnification, meaning the higher up the food chain an organism is, the more this has magnified or become evident in the body. So, whereas a plankton, an individual plankton might have one molecule, an osprey that has eaten fish that have eaten smaller fish that have eaten the plankton, if this has biomagnified, the osprey could have a great deal of this chemical that won't leave its body. So, different biologists study this. One was Louise Gillette, who was studying agricultural rain-off and pesticides. And what they found with this study was that males had a very low level of testosterone and females had very high levels of estrogen. They specifically were studying alligators who were in agricultural runoff from like our farms. And there was a chemical called atrazine that was used as a weed killer. And this weed killer was basically causing alligators to convert their testosterone to estrogen. There was another scientist named Tyrone Hayes, and his team basically was studying frogs and atrazine, which is a weed killer that we've been using on crops, and found that the male frogs that were contaminated with this feminized and were becoming hermaphrodites, and that leopard frogs in the area had various high levels of hormone disruptors. So these things at a minimum were affecting reptiles and amphibians, and there have been studies that have shown that these have also affected various humans. So in humans, they do study humans on these things, but it can be difficult to study with human subjects. They definitely don't want to expose purposefully humans to these different things. So it's hard to compare like the before and after effect. When scientists are studying toxicology, they always look for the lethal dose, which is the amount that will kill half of the study animals, and then they try to find the lethal dose and work backwards from there to see what a safe level is called. And that's called a threshold dose. And this is when the body's organs can metabolize or excrete the toxin, but is not overwhelmed by the toxin. So that's one of the ways that this is studied. There's something called synergistic effects. Synergistic effects are when there are multiple toxins, and maybe each alone they don't have a major effect on a body, but when they're all there together, it's all magnified and made worse. Specifically, going back to BPA, individuals exposed to a lot of BPA, what they found was there was higher breast cancer rates in women exposed to a lot of BPA over their lifetimes, and the males had elevated rates of erectile dysfunction and reduced sperm counts in human males exposed to a lot of BPA. And again, if you look up the lists on that, there's a lot just in your home, you can find a lot of things that have BPA. So sometimes understanding the risk of something, sometimes there's things that we are very afraid of. Some people will get very, very afraid of something like dying in an airplane crash, but they don't really think as much about cancer and heart disease that kill like 1 in 6 and 1 in 7 people, whereas like 1 in 200,000 deaths, almost, you can read the number there, is actually due to an airline accident. So some of these things maybe we need to look at a little bit closer. Okay, so risk management is a study where, like a field of study where they try to look at what are the risks versus the benefits of a certain product, and are the risks worth the benefits in different cases, and that is all weighed out, and that's how different lawmakers make policies and regulate different products. So in the United States, different risk management agencies that we have that weigh out risks can be like the FDA, the EPA, or the CDC. And one decision that they could potentially have to make is that if we outlawed something like BPA because of how it disrupts hormones, well, that would raise like production costs on a lot of different products that we use, and that would be passed to consumers. So, is that worth it or not? Um, and that's something that they have to take into account. So many times the approach that is taken is that products are innocent until proven guilty. So you can manufacture the product until you find out that it has some adverse effects, and then you have to stop making it. Or the other way is to take the precautionary principle, which says, hey, before you can use this product, you need to prove that it is safe. So a lot of testing goes into these different products. That's it that we are going to go over for chapter 10. I recommend you go and look into all of this a little bit more on your own.